piercing silence fills the room as Ryan Gibson stares at the screen, the numbers flashing red in front of him. His company, once on the brink of a breakthrough, is now facing a catastrophic downfall. In just minutes, years of hard work are evaporating. His heart races, sweat dripping from his brow as he grabs the phone, dialing his CFO. "Where are we now? We can't afford another dip like this. We're losing everything," Ryan says, his voice tight with anxiety. The CFO's voice crackles through the line, but the words aren't comforting. "I don't know how to fix this. It's too big, Ryan." Ryan slumps back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He's fought too long and too hard to lose it all now. Yet deep down, he knows the game is changing, and he may not have a chance. The financial collapse wasn't just a market accident. There's something more, something he hasn't yet discovered. His world feels like it's crumbling around him, and every decision he's made in the past months now seems like a mistake. Ryan's mind races. He can't focus. The numbers on the screen are mocking him, each red flash a reminder of his failure. His mind drifts back to the deal with the investor, how it all seemed so perfect at the time. Was it just a mistake? Or was it sabotage? He calls his business partner Kate, who has been silent for hours. "We need to talk. Something's off." "This doesn't feel right," he says, his voice trembling. Kate, 33, is calm, but her words don't reassure him. "Ryan, I'm working on it. But whatever's happening, we can't panic. We need a plan." Ryan knows Kate is doing everything she can, but the gravity of their situation keeps pushing him toward the edge. He can't lose her, the business, or himself. The silence is broken when Kate's voice cracks through the phone line. "Ryan, I think we've been misled. We didn't see this coming." Ryan feels a chill run through him, the weight of her words settling over him like a cold fog. Misled? How had they missed something this crucial? His mind flashes to the recent meetings, the promises, the projections that had seemed so promising. Were they all lies? "Tell me what you know," Ryan demands, his voice low, filled with dread. Kate's voice quivers as she tells him about the discrepancies she found in their latest reports. She's already started looking into their financial advisors, but it's clear now, someone had played them. "If we don't get ahead of this now, it will be too late," she warns. Ryan's stomach drops. He realizes he's no longer fighting for survival in the business world. He's fighting for his very identity. Ryan paces in the quiet office, his mind racing through possibilities. The figures on the screen blur as his thoughts become consumed with questions. How could they not have seen this coming? Was he too focused on the future, too trusting of others? He picks up his phone and calls his mentor, Richard, a seasoned investor who had taken Ryan under his wing. The phone rings, and when Richard answers, Ryan doesn't waste time. "Richard, something's wrong. I need you to help me figure this out. I can't lose everything." Richard's voice is steady, but it carries the wisdom of years in the financial world. "You're in deeper than you think, Ryan. But you need to understand something. You're not just fighting for your business. You're fighting for your reputation." Richard's words hit hard. Ryan realizes that everything he's worked for is at risk, not just the startup, but his entire identity. The pressure builds as Richard offers cryptic advice, leaving Ryan with even more questions than answers. After the call, Ryan sits at his desk, staring blankly at the screen. Richard's words echo in his mind. "You're fighting for your reputation." But how can he fight when everything feels so out of control? He thought the startup would be his legacy. But now, as the numbers continue to flash red, he wonders if he'll be remembered as the one who couldn't make it work. The phone rings again, and this time, it's Kate. "We've got a leak, Ryan. Someone's digging into our financials. We're being watched." Ryan slams his fist on the desk, frustration bubbling to the surface. "Who's behind this? We need to stop it before it's too late." Kate's voice is urgent. "I don't know yet, but we need to act fast." As Ryan sets the phone down, he feels the enormity of their situation sink in. He's not just fighting to save his company anymore. He's fighting to protect everything he's ever worked for. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling of impending disaster. The numbers on his screen blurred again, a reminder of the growing mess he was trying to clean up. Kate had been working late, trying to trace the source of the leak, but every lead turned up nothing. He paced around the office, his mind spinning with what seemed like endless possibilities. The financial documents, reports that had once been his pride, now felt like a string of lies that tied him to this chaos. He stopped in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, watching as the city seemed so distant, so indifferent. "We should have seen it coming," he muttered to himself, his face tense. His phone buzzed. It was Kate again. "Ryan is bigger than we thought. I found something that connects to a larger network of investors. Someone is pulling the strings behind the scenes." His heart skipped a beat. Could they be up against someone much more powerful than they realized? "This isn't just about the startup anymore," Kate's voice continued. "It's about the entire financial system we've been working in." Ryan leaned against the window, feeling the weight of her words. This was no longer just a business problem. It was a fight for survival. Kate's discovery sent shockwaves through Ryan. As the night deepened, the information she found began to make more sense, yet the connections were disturbing. A network of high-profile investors, their financial deals tangled in ways that seemed too deliberate to be mere coincidences. "This is no accident, Ryan," Kate said, her voice steady but strained. "There are forces at play here that are well beyond us." She continued to sift through the evidence, her fingers tapping furiously on the keyboard. Ryan, feeling helpless, stared at his phone. It was the same list of numbers he'd seen 100 times. Investment firms, loan officers, and key financial players, all now under scrutiny. "What's the next move?" Ryan asked, his tone laced with anxiety. Kate paused for a moment before answering. "We need to expose this, but we need the right leverage. The kind that will make people listen." Ryan exhaled sharply. He knew they were treading dangerous ground, but there was no turning back now. If they didn't act, the consequences could be dire. Ryan couldn't help but feel the pressure mounting. Every moment seemed like a countdown, and every decision felt like it could be their last. The next few hours would determine whether they had a chance to survive this. "This is it," he said, his voice strained. "If we don't get to the bottom of this now, we'll lose everything." Kate nodded, her face pale in the soft light of her desk lamp. She had been working non-stop, poring over every document she could find, trying to uncover the truth. But the deeper she dug, the more tangled the web became. "I can't trust anyone right now, Ryan," she replied, her voice hoarse. "This isn't just about money. It's about who's really pulling the strings." Ryan felt a cold rush of realization. They weren't just up against a financial crisis. They were facing a powerful enemy with connections in high places. The thought was terrifying, but he couldn't back down now. "We have to move fast," Ryan said, determination filling his voice. "Find out who's behind this." Ryan's phone buzzed again, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at midnight. I have information you need." It was cryptic, but Ryan didn't hesitate. This could be the breakthrough they were looking for. He quickly turned to Kate. "We have to go. Now." They gathered their things quickly, the adrenaline kicking in as they prepared to leave. Kate, her face tight with nerves, was already grabbing her coat. "Who's the contact?" she asked, her voice low. "I don't know," Ryan admitted. "But we can't ignore this." They hurried to the elevator, the tension thick in the air. As they descended, Ryan felt the familiar weight of uncertainty. What if this meeting led to something even worse than they imagined? What if it was a trap? But they had no choice. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. It was time to face the unknown. As they arrived at the designated location, Ryan's pulse quickened. The place was isolated, tucked away in a quiet part of the city, far from the busy streets and the bustle of downtown. He glanced at Kate, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "What if this is a trap?" she whispered. Ryan shook his head. "We have no choice." The sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty streets as they approached the building. A shadow moved at the door. "Ryan," the figure called out, a man in his mid-40s wearing a worn leather jacket and a baseball cap, his face partially obscured. "I have the information you need, but you need to be careful who you trust now." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. He had no idea who this man was, but his warning hit harder than any of the data they had uncovered so far. The stakes were higher than ever. "Who's behind this?" Ryan asked urgently. The man paused, his eyes scanning the street before answering. "It's bigger than you think." Ryan stared at the text message, his heart sinking as he read the words. It was from his business partner, Kate. "I need to talk. It's about the deal." The message left a cold, uneasy feeling in his chest. He called her immediately, but when she picked up, her voice sounded distant. "Ryan," Kate began, hesitating, "I didn't want you to find out this way, but I've been talking to someone else about buying us out." Ryan's stomach churned. Betrayal stung deep, and for a moment he couldn't speak. "Kate, how could you?" he finally managed to say. She was silent for a moment, and when she spoke again, her tone was defensive. "It's the only way, Ryan. You weren't listening, and things were falling apart." Ryan slammed his fist on the desk, the betrayal weighing on him. It wasn't just the business, it was their friendship. And now, he wasn't sure who he could trust anymore. Ryan spent the next few hours pacing, trying to make sense of Kate's actions. His mind replayed every conversation they'd had, every decision they'd made together, and now it all felt like lies. He had trusted her, but the evidence was overwhelming. The deal she had been negotiating behind his back was a game changer, and he wasn't sure if he could recover from it. In a moment of anger, he texted her, "We're done. I can't work with someone who doesn't value our partnership." The message was sent, but the weight of the words felt heavier than he expected. It wasn't just about the business. It was about the years they had spent building something together, and now all of that was crumbling. He had to face the truth. Kate's betrayal might be the end of everything. Kate's betrayal hits Ryan hard, but it's not just about the personal loss. The financial deal she was pursuing could leave Ryan with nothing. It's a gut punch, but he knows he has to move forward. There's no time to wallow in hurt. The next morning he meets with his mentor, Richard, to figure out a way to salvage what's left. "You can't afford to lose everything, Ryan," Richard advises. "You need to be ruthless now more than ever." Ryan's hands tremble as he listens to Richard's cold, calculating advice. "Are you telling me to fight dirty?" Ryan asks. "Sometimes that's the only way," Richard responds. Ryan knew this day would come, the day when he had to choose between his integrity and his survival. But this betrayal felt like the first step into a darker world. Ryan spends the next few days trying to regroup. He meets with investors, some willing to listen, others eager to pull out. With each conversation, the reality of his situation becomes clearer. His world is falling apart, and he's losing control. "We've been following your company for a while, Ryan," one of the investors says, his tone indifferent. "But with the recent issues, we're pulling out." The words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. He pleads for more time, for another chance. But the investor is unmoved. "You should have been more careful," the man adds before hanging up. Ryan slumps back in his chair, defeated. It's not just the business, it's everything he's worked for, slipping through his fingers. But even as the weight of failure presses down on him, there's a fire burning inside. He won't give up without a fight. In the quiet of his office, Ryan watches the sun set. The weight of the past few days hangs over him, but the fire inside still burns. He knows he can't stop now, not when everything is at stake. As he sits in the growing darkness, his phone buzzes again. It's Kate. "We need to talk, Ryan." The message reads. His heart races, but he doesn't respond. The betrayal still lingers in his mind, and he's not sure he can trust her again. But something tells him that he needs to face her, to hear what she has to say. The game is changing, and so is he. He's no longer the man who was once full of hope and ambition. Now, he's a man willing to fight for what's left, no matter the cost. Ryan paced the room, the papers scattered on his desk becoming a blur as his mind raced. Kate's betrayal still stung, but something she had said kept replaying in his mind. It's bigger than we think. He had assumed it was just about the money, the deal, the company. But what if there was more to it? His thoughts were interrupted by an unexpected call. It was from Richard. "You need to come to the office now," Richard said. There was urgency in his voice. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" he asked. Richard's response was cryptic, only adding to the growing sense of dread. "Just come. Trust me." When Ryan arrived at the office, Richard was already there, a folder in hand. "This is the key to everything," Richard said, opening the folder to reveal a series of financial statements. "What you're dealing with is far more complex than you could have imagined. This isn't just a bad deal. This is a system designed to take you down." Ryan looked at the papers, a chill creeping down his spine. "Who's behind this?" he whispered. Richard didn't answer directly. "It's not about who, it's about what. They control the flow of money, Ryan. You're caught in the middle." The realization hit Ryan like a freight train. What Richard had just uncovered was a massive, orchestrated plan to crush not just his startup, but anyone who dared challenge the financial giants controlling the market. "This is it, Ryan," Richard continued. "You've been playing in a game where the rules were set long before you entered. They've been watching you, pulling strings from the shadows." Ryan was speechless. The world he thought he knew, the one he had fought to build, now felt like a fragile illusion. "How do we fight back?" Ryan asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Richard gave a grim smile. His eyes darkened with years of experience. "We don't. Not yet. First we expose them, but we need the right leverage." Ryan nodded, his mind working through the implications. Exposing them meant risking everything. His company, his reputation, maybe even his life. But the stakes were higher than ever. He had no choice now. It was time to go on the offensive. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and research. Ryan and Richard dug deeper into the financial network they had uncovered, pulling at threads they hadn't even known existed. The deeper they went, the more they realized how far-reaching the conspiracy was. "I don't think we can trust anyone, not even the people we thought were on our side," Ryan said, his voice low. Richard's answer was chilling. "That's exactly what they want, Ryan, to make you question everything, to isolate you." Ryan clenched his jaw, the realization sinking in that this wasn't just about a business deal anymore. This was about survival. "So what now?" Ryan asked, his mind still reeling from the enormity of the situation. "Now we wait, we gather everything we can. The right moment will come, but you need to be prepared for the consequences," Richard replied, his tone unwavering. Ryan could feel the weight of Richard's words, the unspoken truth that they were playing a dangerous game. But he couldn't back down now, not when everything was on the line. As the days passed, Ryan's obsession with the conspiracy grew. Every waking moment was consumed by the need to uncover the people behind the scheme. Kate tried reaching out to him several times, but Ryan ignored her calls. She had betrayed him, and he wasn't ready to face her yet. But his isolation began to wear on him. He couldn't do this alone. One evening, Kate showed up at his office unannounced. "I know you're angry, Ryan," she said softly, standing in the doorway, "but I need you to understand. I never meant to hurt you." Ryan stood up from his desk, his emotions bubbling to the surface. "You've hurt me, Kate. You've destroyed everything we worked for," he snapped. Kate's eyes filled with regret, but she didn't back down. "We can still fix this," she pleaded. Ryan took a deep breath. The tension thick in the air. Could he trust her again? Or had the damage already been done? The decision weighed heavily on him, but the stakes had never been higher. Ryan's heart raced as Kate continued to speak, but he wasn't sure if he could believe her anymore. The weight of the betrayal was too much. He stood in front of the window, watching the city below. "What now, Ryan?" Kate asked, her voice softer now. "I don't know," he replied, his voice distant. "I need to figure this out." The room felt cold, even though the city was alive with lights. It was as if the world outside no longer mattered. Kate took a step forward, her voice quiet. "Let me help you. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm still here." Ryan turned to face her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. Could he trust her again? Or was he too far gone? The question lingered in the air, heavy and unresolved. He had a decision to make, and it wouldn't be easy. But with everything on the line, Ryan knew he had to find a way to fight back. The stakes were higher than ever, and he couldn't afford to lose again. Ryan stared at the proposal in front of him, the stakes higher than ever. His options were running out, and he had to make a move. A bold one. The financial game he had been playing for so long was now a battle for survival. "This is it?" Ryan muttered, his fingers tracing the numbers on the page. The plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had. He had to put everything on the line, including his reputation. Kate's voice broke the silence. "Are you sure about this, Ryan?" she asked, concern lacing her words. Ryan met her gaze. "If we don't do this, we're done. There's no other way." Kate looked away, knowing he was right, but still unsure of the outcome. The decision was made. It was a gamble, but it was the only way forward. As the hours ticked by, Ryan's anxiety grew. The risk was enormous, but the potential rewards could turn the tide. He called his investors one by one, pitching the high-stakes plan. Some were skeptical, but a few agreed to back him. "You have one shot at this," one of them warned. "If it fails, you lose everything." Ryan gripped the phone tightly, the pressure mounting. His mind raced through every possibility, every potential outcome. "We're all in this together," Ryan said, his voice steady but tinged with fear. "If we don't take this risk, we'll all lose." The silence on the other end was deafening before they agreed to move forward. The gamble had begun, and Ryan knew there was no turning back. The night passed in a blur, with Ryan making calls and finalizing the deal. As dawn broke, he sat back in his chair, exhausted but focused. The gamble was now in motion. "Now, we wait," Richard's voice echoed in his mind. Ryan knew the next 24 hours would be crucial. The weight of the gamble pressed on him, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. Every moment felt like a countdown. The fate of everything, the startup, his reputation, was in the hands of others now. He had done all he could. The clock was ticking. The phone rings, breaking the silence. Ryan's heart skips a beat. It's the confirmation. He picks it up, his hand shaking slightly. "It's done," the voice on the other end says. "The deal has been finalized." For a moment, Ryan feels a sense of relief, but it's quickly replaced by the reality of what he's done. "Now the real work begins," he says, his voice hoarse. Kate, who has been silent all night, finally speaks up. "You did it, Ryan. You pulled it off." Ryan looks at her, his face hard. "We're not out of the woods yet. But this is our chance." The gamble paid off, but the game was far from over. As the night fades into morning, Ryan sits in the dark, the weight of his decision still heavy on his shoulders. He couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. "What have I done?" he whispers to himself, staring at the glowing computer screen. The city outside is quiet, and for the first time in days, there's a brief moment of peace. But Ryan knows that peace is fleeting. The next phase of the battle is about to begin. The risk has been taken, and there's no turning back now. His fingers hover over the keyboard, ready to face whatever comes next. Ryan's heart raced as the final moment approached. The clock was ticking, and everything he had fought for was hanging by a thread. The gamble had paid off, but the consequences were still unclear. Richard's voice echoed in his mind. "This is the moment, Ryan. You've come too far to turn back." He paced in the office, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The financial landscape had shifted, and he was caught in the storm, the eye of a hurricane that could tear everything apart. His phone buzzed again. It was Kate. "It's happening now," her message read. The meeting with the investors was about to begin. Ryan wiped the sweat from his forehead and dialed the number for the final showdown. This was it. The confrontation with the forces behind the curtain. If he succeeded, everything would change. If he failed, there would be no going back. The conference room felt cold and sterile, as if the air itself carried the weight of the stakes. Ryan sat at the head of the table, flanked by his investors, their eyes on him. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard was there too, leaning forward, his eyes sharp, ready for the confrontation that was about to unfold. The head of the opposing group, a smooth-talking investor with a calculating smile, spoke first. "So Ryan, you think you can outplay us? You've been backed into a corner, and yet you're still trying to fight?" Ryan's breath caught in his throat, but he steadied himself. "You underestimated me," he replied, his voice calm but filled with resolve. "You thought you could pull the strings without consequences, but this isn't just about money anymore. This is personal." The room went silent as the tension built, the final battle beginning. Ryan had nothing left to lose, but everything to gain. The conversation grew heated as accusations flew across the table. Ryan's mind raced as he countered every blow, every tactic, his words sharper than he had ever intended. "You think you can silence me? That I'll bow down to your manipulation?" Ryan shouted, standing up. The investors shifted uncomfortably, but they knew the power had shifted. Richard remained calm, watching from the sidelines as Ryan took control of the narrative. "You've been pulling the strings behind the scenes, but it's over. I've exposed you for what you truly are," Ryan said, his voice cutting through the tension. A silence fell over the room, the finality in his words hanging heavy. The deal was done. The betrayal was exposed. Ryan had taken back control, but the question now was, what would happen next? Would he survive the fallout? The final blow came when Ryan uncovered the last piece of the puzzle. The investor who had been behind everything all along. The revelation was like a thunderclap. "You thought you were safe, didn't you?" Ryan said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But your empire is built on lies, and I'm about to tear it down." The investor across from him remained calm, his eyes never leaving Ryan's. "You think you've won?" the investor asked. "This isn't the end." Ryan's heart pounded as he realized the depth of the corruption he was up against. But there was no turning back now. With a single document, he revealed everything. The financial fraud, the backdoor deals, the manipulation that had ruined so many. "Now the world will know," Ryan said, his voice filled with finality. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence as the truth was laid bare. The final meeting was over, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling of dread that still hung in the air. The deal had been exposed, and the investors had been dealt a serious blow. But as he left the conference room, the weight of the battle still lingered. He had won the fight, but at what cost? Kate approached him, her expression apologetic but cautious. "I know I can never make up for what I did," she said quietly. Ryan paused, his mind racing. Could he forgive her? Could he trust her again? The question lingered in the air, unresolved. But for the first time in days, Ryan felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he thought, this was the turning point. "I don't know, Kate," he said slowly, "but we'll see what happens next." The days following the final confrontation were tense but full of promise. The dust was settling, and the financial world was beginning to see the truth. Ryan sat in his office, watching the market recover slowly. His company was still standing, but just barely. "We made it," Kate said softly, entering the room. Ryan glanced at her, the weight of their past still heavy. "We did," he replied, though the uncertainty still lingered in his eyes. "But it's not over." This was just the first step. Kate nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. The battle was far from over, but they had taken the first step toward reclaiming their future. Ryan exhaled slowly, the quiet moment offering a brief respite before the next challenge came. For now, though, they had survived. As the dust settled, Ryan found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. The company, the betrayal, the fight for survival. It all seemed like a distant memory now. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. "We've come so far," Kate said, standing beside him. "But do you think we've really won?" Ryan looked at her, his face unreadable. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know this. Nothing will ever be the same again." He stood up, walking towards the window, the city now alive with the morning light. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it. Whatever came next, he would be prepared. The financial world was never the same after that. The media picked up on the scandal, the investors who had tried to crush Ryan's startup now exposed for their manipulation. For Ryan, the victory felt hollow, though. "We've lost so much," he said, sitting in the conference room. "But we still have each other, right?" Kate's voice was steady. "Yes, and that's what matters most." They shared a moment of quiet understanding, the tension between them easing slightly. Their future was uncertain, but they had survived the storm together. The battle was over, but the road ahead was long. As the weeks passed, Ryan began to rebuild. Slowly but surely, the company started to recover. But it wasn't just the business that had changed. It was him. "I've learned a lot from all this," Ryan said one evening, sitting across from Kate in a small cafe. "It's not just about the money or the company. It's about knowing who you can trust." Kate smiled faintly. "We've been through hell, but we're still standing." Ryan nodded, the weight of the past still on his shoulders, but lighter now. "And we'll keep standing together." As the final chapter closed, Ryan found himself standing alone in the office, looking at the city skyline one last time. Everything had changed. He had fought for his company, for his future, and he had won. "It's over," Ryan whispered to himself. But what's next? The question lingered in the air as he turned away from the window, his steps determined. There was still so much left to do. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was ready for whatever came next. As he walked toward the door, he smiled, knowing that whatever the future held, he could face it head on.